What's going on, guys? In this one we're going to be making a quick, easy and absolutely fantastic spaghetti bolognese. Let's get straight into it. Please sit back, relax and enjoy.
Alright guys, starting us off, we're going to create a mirepoix, and this consists of onion, carrots and celery. For this we're going to need 2 of each, with the celery being optional if you don't like it, but you can't taste it as a single ingredient. As for preparation, we're going to run all 3 along the largest side of a box grater, which will break it down and allow us to extract more flavour compared to slicing or dicing. Here is 4 cloves of freshly peeled garlic, to which we can run along a fine microplane or grater to create a paste, otherwise known as minced, making sure to scrape it all out of there to avoid wasting any of this good stuff. Next is 200 grams or 7.05 ounces of streaky bacon, which comes from the pork belly, but you can use back bacon if need be, and this also can be left out, but it's mainly used for its fat to flavour the bolognese. With this, slice it in half to make it easier to work with, then with each half stacked up, slice into 1 to 2 centimeter strips, rotate those strips 90 degrees and come through to dice this up into medium sized pieces. One thing for this is don't make it too small, otherwise it will dry out and burn. It is better to have slightly larger chunks. For another optional but highly recommended ingredient is 200 grams or 7.05 ounces of sun-dried tomatoes. With these, just give them a rough chop to break them up, and the flavour that these release creates the perfect combination within the sauce, adding amazing depth and a nice concentrated tomato flavour and infusion. Last but not least is the fresh herbs, which consists of 10 grams or 0.3 ounces of picked oregano leaves, 10 grams or 0.3 ounces of picked rosemary leaves, and 10 grams or 0.3 ounces of picked basil leaves. With these 3, scrunch them up into a tight bunch to make them easier to work with, and then come through with a sharp knife, giving them a rough chop, which doesn't need to be perfect, just as long as it's nicely broken down with no large leaves. Now to get this properly started, place a large pot or high-rimmed pan over a high heat, and whilst it's heating up, add in the diced streaky bacon and fry this for 3 minutes, moving it around regularly. Like I said during the prep, we want to render out the fat and use it as flavouring to cook out other ingredients, but if you can't consume pork or simply don't want to use it, substitute it with 1.5 tablespoons or 30 milliliters of olive oil. Next we can add in the mirepoix, which is the grated onion, along with the grated carrot and the grated celery, if you're using it of course, and saute this for 4 minutes, moving it around regularly. Because we grated our veg compared to slicing or dicing, it's going to allow more flavour to be extracted as the moisture can make its way out a lot easier, which will then make our end product taste even better. Once that's done, let's add in the garlic paste or minced garlic, as well as the roughly chopped oregano and the roughly chopped rosemary for that herbaceous flavour infusion. Season generously to taste with sea salt flakes, then continue mixing for 2 minutes, stirring frequently to allow the garlic to release its flavour and for those herbs to infuse into our mirepoix. Let's now introduce 500 grams or 1.1 pounds of beef mince and 500 grams or 1.1 pounds of pork mince, with these 2 being interchangeable if you wish to make substitutes. Break these up, mixing them through the other ingredients, and whilst mixing regularly, brown the meats for 6 to 7 minutes. During this stage, the fat is going to render out, creating more flavour, but we want to cook the water out of the fat, leaving us with the rich flavour left behind. Some people like to drain it, but I personally don't, as that's where all the flavour is and you're literally throwing that away. Also halfway through, season to taste with sea salt flakes, making sure that it's mixed through well. After 7 minutes, the meats are nicely browned and only the rendered fat remains. Let's deglaze and add depth by introducing 1 cup or 250 milliliters of cheap red wine, which can be substituted for vegetable, chicken or beef stock if you can't consume alcohol or want to make this a little bit cheaper. Continue the mixing to allow the wine or stock to pull up any bits stuck around the pot or pan, and while still over a high heat, bring this to a boil and allow it to reduce for 2 minutes or reduce down by half. Once achieved, add in the roughly chopped sun-dried tomatoes to add that delicious concentrated flavour, along with the roughly chopped basil for a fresh herbaceous infusion, 2 cans of diced tomatoes, which is 800 grams or 1.76 pounds worth to create our sauce, also adding in a splash of water to rinse out any leftover diced tomatoes. Season to taste yet again with sea salt flakes, and this time we're also adding in 20 cracks of black pepper. The reason this gets seasoned throughout or so much is because dishes like this constantly change in flavour and will always need to be adjusted. This can then be given a really big mix to allow those flavours to become friends and bring this delicious sauce to a boil, and once that's done, reduce the heat to medium-low, place on a lid and say goodbye for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, that can then be removed with us having a really nice established sauce that we can then give another big mix, check it again for seasoning, adjusting if necessary with sea salt flakes and cracked black pepper, Mix that through one last time, then reduce the heat to low and simmer for a remaining 15 minutes before turning it off the heat. In the meantime, to do our pasta, place a large saucepan of water over a high heat, generously season with salt, and then bring this to a boil. Once that's done, add in 150 grams or 5.2 ounces per serving of the pasta of your choice, with myself using number 7 spaghetti. Let it sit for 20 seconds to soften it up before we can then twist it in and cook this as per the packet instructions, with most pastas taking 7 to 11 minutes depending on the size. Once this is cooked, we can then either add it straight into the bolognese sauce, or because it's a lot of sauce and you might want leftovers, you can add it straight to a mixing bowl, but either way, bring along some of that pasta water, also reserving some to help mix it. If you added it to a bowl, add in as much of the meat sauce as you'd like, or if you added the pasta to the sauce, mix it really well, adding in additional pasta water to help the sauce stick. With the bowl method, this can then be given a really big mix, making sure everything is all lathered up, and just like the other method, add in the additional pasta water to help the sauce stick. This can now be served in bowls or plates or whatever you're into, creating a nice big mound of sauced up spaghetti, then come through and add over that delicious bolognese sauce, with the amount being completely up to you. For some additional toppings and garnishes, grate over some fresh Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, drizzle over some extra virgin olive oil, hit it up with some freshly cracked black pepper, and garnish with a fresh basil leaf, to then leave us with this beautiful and extremely delicious bolognese that looks, smells, and tastes absolutely incredible. The only thing that's left to do is then get out our cutlery and hopefully not make a mess of it like I'm doing here, but who cares about that anyway, because we can then dig in.